When we came out to these islands, I had no idea that we'd be getting an insight into the worldwide pet trade. This is crazy. I had absolutely no idea that it would be possible even. I certainly didn't realise that it was happening so close to where we've spent the last year. We are Matt and Amy, and together with our 37-foot yacht Florence, we are circumnavigating the world and sharing our adventure along the way.
Indonesia has one of the biggest fishing industries in the world, second only to China. Sailing through the coastal waters, we have seen thousands of fishing boats of all shapes and sizes. Until now, he had made the mistake of thinking they were all fishing for food, either for local markets or for export. But a chance encounter led us to discovering another side to this fishing industry.
A recent storm which forced us to hide in a sheltered anchorage in the Mentawai Islands of Indonesia led to an experience that will stay in our memories forever. Taking shelter along with us was a local fishing boat with its typically friendly Indonesian crew, and as the weather improved, we became friends.
So we've been for so long now, because of Corona, trying to avoid everybody. There's really low cases of Corona out in the islands here, and for once we decided that when we got invited by some of the local fishermen across to their boat, we actually decided for once we'd say yes, and we just had a really nice afternoon chatting with them on their boat, and then they came across and we showed them around Florence.
Beyond basic conversation, we were all grateful for translation apps to help bridge the language barrier.
We've kind of all been isolated here because it's been such bad weather for the last week, in sight of each other but not really meeting up, and it's just been really nice today to spend the afternoon with them, and I'm looking forward to going across there and trying some of their food, but also a little bit of I don't know how hot it's going to be, but it's kind of what all this travelling around the world is about, and we've missed it for so long now. So yeah, pretty good day.
The fishing boat was tied up to one of the surf charter boats, which is out of work due to closed borders.
On board the fishing boat they showed us their catch, which is not what we were expecting. Hundreds of bags of fish captured alive for the saltwater aquarium market.
Since the film Finding Nemo, there has been an explosion in the global aquarium fish trade. But 98% of tropical saltwater fish cannot be bred in captivity on a commercial scale, so they have to come from the wild. Indonesia is one of the largest exporters of tropical fish in the world.
What wasn't clear was how they went about catching the fish, or how they managed to keep them alive for 2 weeks before they returned to shore. And they all sorted that. Oh yeah, cleaner fish. There's loads of them in here. Yeah, so it must be a real job to keep changing all the water. That's crazy.
That evening, we enjoyed a meal with our new fisherman friends. It's very nice. Is this sama-sama?
Yeah, sama-sama.
Panas sama-sama?
Yeah.
Ah, good. Proper Indonesian.
Yeah,
real Indonesian.
So it's got a few chilies in it, but they're really good. It's not too hot, but it's nice and hot. I think our tastes have changed since we've been in Indonesia.
One of the brilliant things about moving around the world with our home is that we can also share our home with the people we meet. The next night, the guys were keen to try some European food. So we started gently with spaghetti bolognese, garlic bread, and a little Parmesan cheese for the brave.
Okay, alright man. Hello guys, welcome to channel. I know English. I know stupid English, guys.
You know lots of English. So everybody's making videos on board. I'm not sure what the videos are for. But it's just nice to have people on board and saying hello. These guys have showed us around their boat. It's really nice to show them around ours. We asked a lot of questions about how they went about catching the fish, and this was difficult to translate, so they invited us to come and see for ourselves. Well, this is a bit different. We've been invited to go fishing with these guys today.
We've seen so many of these boats in Indonesia, and we've just climbed aboard them sometimes to get across to a jetty, but we've never been out fishing with them and seen what they're doing close up. So today's going to be really interesting. We've always watched from a distance and wondered what they're doing, but today we get to find out. The storm of the past few days had passed, leaving an overcast sky but calm seas.
Indonesian style. It's pretty noisy on board the boat, so talking to camera was a little difficult.
The boat is about 45 feet long and has a crew of 5, plus the captain and his son. The 7 of them live on board for weeks at a time, fishing the reefs of the Tello and Mento Islands, the very same area that we've been staying for the last few months.
The boat is pretty basic but carries everything they need. All their meals are cooked on board and they sleep here. As you can see, there isn't much space for 7. We aren't quite sure if there's one designated cook or they all share the task, but Sandy seemed to cook everything we ate on board, and we were kept very well fed. Along with the ornamental fish, they also catch fresh fish to feed themselves every day.
As with most Indonesian vessels, the sound system is the most important feature.
As we sipped our coffees and admired the view, the first crew member was preparing to enter the water for the first of many times that day.
We dropped him off next to a reef and immediately left him a mile or so behind as we headed on to a deeper site to fish.
So they've dropped one guy off who's just snorkeling with a catch net, and then some of the other guys are going to be using like a hookah kit. So they've got this hose, and down below they've got a compressor they've just started up. And so they're going to use that so they can go down and stay down longer to catch the fish.
Using a very basic hookah kit like this is a risky way of diving. There are no backup regulators, no depth gauge or watch to monitor their time underwater. They're both sharing one single hose and compressor, so should that stop or they get a kink in the hose, their air supply would be cut off, leaving them no option but a risky rapid return to the surface without air.
You're trusting that with your life down there.
Although I know these guys do this all the time, I was genuinely nervous for them. As they disappeared from view, we hopped in to see if we could see what they were up to.
I just jumped over the side to kind of see if I could see what they're doing, but man, they're so deep. They must be at least 20 meters deep. I don't know what they're getting down there, because I think the small ornamental fish are in shallower water, but yeah, I could just follow their trail of bubbles, and occasionally by diving down I could just about see them. I mean, the water's really clear, but I couldn't get anywhere close to them. And they've been down there for a long time now. That's going to be hard work for them. So they did offer us a go with the Hookah kit, and if they'd been a bit shallower, maybe I would have been tempted, but also maybe I would have been tempted before we'd learned how to scuba dive. And having just learned how to scuba dive and now know all the dangers of going down there and you know, forgetting to breathe out on the way up, lots of things we wouldn't have known before. I'm very glad we know those now, and no thank you, I don't want to go down on the kit they use and take those risks. Yeah, we're used to spare regulators, spare everything, lots of safety, and they don't have any of that.
I've tried to ask about the understanding of the risk of using a Hookah kit and diving, and we're obviously a little bit limited because we can only use Google Translate for any more technical questions, and the guys that I've spoken to say that they haven't received any training when they first came on the boat. They've just kind of learned as they've gone along. So they say that they haven't been ill, but maybe, I don't know, maybe they just don't associate it with diving.
I don't know, maybe they're absolutely fine and they just got lucky.
I know that the PADI regulations are very, very conservative in order to keep people safe, but these guys are diving way out of those limits.
So for this first dive of the day, we're estimating their depth at 20 metres. That's what they've told us, and it seems about right looking down from the surface. But there's no depth gauge to check that, and they've been underwater for over an hour. Comparing that to our PADI dive tables, which to be fair are very conservative, we see that at 20 metres the maximum time allowed on the bottom is 45 minutes before we would need a decompression stop on the way up. Ascending without that stop risks decompression sickness, otherwise known as the bends, and that is a life-threatening condition.
There's obviously no dive computer here, no decompression tables that we have seen, and it doesn't seem like anybody's calculating how long the guys are down for, but they do alternate between diving on the Hookah system and also diving, just snorkeling at a shallower level. So maybe that's just enough to keep them within the safe limits, but who knows if that's luck or calculated judgment. I'm not really sure.
I'm sure there's going to be lots of these times in our voyaging that we would love to actually have the scuba kit on board Florence ourselves, because if we had our own scuba kit we could go down alongside them and really see what they're doing down there. Yeah, but I don't want to take the Hookah kit down.
Clearly I was wrong to think that the ornamental fish would not be down that deep, but the fact that the fish have been brought up from depth causes a problem. The air in the fish expands as they are brought up, and as soon as they are brought on board, the crew go to work with small needles to let the air out of those cavities before it kills the fish. Some of the fish need their guts pushing back in with a matchstick. Amazingly, the vast majority of fish survive this trauma, and then it's time to bag them up for storage on board.
The fish are separated into plastic bags of seawater, and before the top of the bag is tied off, they get a squirt of oxygen from the O2 bottles stored on board.
Once the fish are stored on board like this, they create a continual job for the crew. During the day, normally 3 of the crew are in the water catching fish, and the other 2 are continually working to refresh the seawater and oxygen in the bagged fish. Every couple of hours they swap roles. They work very hard.
So far we've seen the results of their efforts, but not how they actually catch the fish. The next fishing spot was shallower, so we jumped in to see the guys at work underwater.
So they've got a float with a bowl in the middle with a net over the top of that bowl so the fish can't jump out, and I guess they're going to catch the fish using the net. You have seen people snorkeling around towing these things when we've been anchored out near some nice reefs, so yeah, it makes more sense now.
Once he spots a fish he wants to catch, he spreads out the net in an arc. The net has a chain to weight it on one end and floats on the other.
Then he literally chases the fish into the net and grabs it in his hands to place in the keep bowl and float. These guys work hard, they're swimming fast all of the time.
If the fish hide under a rock, they're chased out with a stick. It's not easy though. This one escaped through a hole in the net.
The technique for the hookah divers is similar, except that they work as a team to corral the fish at a deeper level.
Some fish are worth more than others, so the guys are very selective in what they take, targeting certain fish species.
Each dive is somewhere between 1 and 1.5 hours. The number of fish caught per dive was between 10 and 20 when we were on board.
The guys here are out for weeks. They're in the water for the entire day, just constantly changing over as to who's diving, who's snorkeling, who's replacing the water in the bags, who's bagging the fish. Like, so much work and so much time, all to take pretty fish from the reef here in Indonesia to China and the West and all over the world to fuel the pet industry and aquariums. It's something that I never ever knew was happening. It's just not something I thought about. I certainly didn't realise that it was happening so close to where we've spent the last year.
We know that this fishing is not sustainable in the way that it's done at the moment.
Yeah, it's been a really eye-opening experience for me, because it's not just that one fish that's in an aquarium has meant one less fish on the reef, but it's taking fish from an environment that they can breed to somewhere that they can't. So the fish stocks on the reefs are just not able to recover.
And the guys have been doing this for at least 6 years, and they freely admit that it has become harder and harder to find the fish on the reef. And we've experienced that as well ourselves, because we've been snorkeling around a lot of these reefs and places where you would expect to see lots of fish. For example, an anemone would normally have lots of clownfish around it, but in the place we were just recently, we found loads of anemone with just one solitary clownfish. And now we kind of understand why that is. It would be easy to see these guys as villains because they're stripping the reef of all of the fish. But a little bit of research shows that they're actually doing this in a far more environmentally friendly way than a lot of ornamental fishing.
where they use dynamite and cyanide to stun the fish so that they're easier to collect, which obviously results in huge damage to the reef and killing a lot of other fish other than just the ones that you want.
And that's definitely not what these guys were doing.
No, they've not done that at all.
We really hope that they do understand and manage the risks of compressor diving. It was just hard to have that conversation using Google Translate. They did reduce the depth of the dive as the day went on, but we don't know if that was a dive plan or just where they happened to be fishing. But researching online highlights that there have been a lot of casualties among fishermen doing this sort of diving in Indonesia. You just have to Google compressor diving Indonesia.
It's been a fantastic opportunity to spend the last few days with these guys. They're just so open and friendly. And this is the sort of experience that we've really been missing because of having to stay much more isolated over the last months because of COVID.
Yeah, there's obviously been a contrast between the lovely people that we've been spending time with and the job that they're doing. And we would obviously prefer if the fish were left on the reef and that these guys weren't risking their lives in order to catch them. But the industry is there and these guys are just a small cog in a massive wheel.
So we can't really judge them for that. But next time you see a fish in an aquarium, just for me, it's just think that there's actually somebody, a bloke has gone down and swum around and chased that fish into a net to catch it, which for me, it just blows me away that that's how they catch them.
Yeah, for me it's also the fact that that fish has survived being transported around the world. I mean, it's potentially sat in a plastic bag on the deck of a hot fishing boat for 2 weeks before it's even reached the mainland where it might be put into a bigger tank. It's quite amazing.
It's kind of crazy that this is
they survive.
Global commercial industry.
Yeah. Our Indonesian visa is now coming to an end, so in the next episode we'll head back to the main island of Sumatra for our final visa extension and our last opportunity to explore this area before we get stuck into preparing for our 3,000-mile Indian Ocean crossing.
Only for this to happen.
Okay, selamat pagi.
Mau kemana?
Where are you going?
We want to say a huge thank you to everybody who supported us, either via the PayPal link on our website or via Patreon. Whether it was to buy us a beer or contribute to upgrading our camera equipment, it all makes a huge difference to our ability to continue sharing this adventure.